What's up, y'all? Welcome to Cultural Canvases, Black Men Reshaping Fine Art and Creative Spaces. I'm here for the new episode with a special guest of mine, a brother, homie, friend,
Yeah,
dope
thanks.
artist, my brother Blue Robin. Welcome, my
What's
brother. I'm
good?
glad to have you here, man.
I'm glad to be here, man. Glad to be here.
Yes, sir. So now we rocking up. Everybody can see my studio is a little different. I'm on the East Coast this week. I'm happy to be here, and just enjoying the weather first of all, because in Cali we don't get we getting rain right now, but it ain't nothing like this cold. But how
Right.
you living today, my brother?
It's good. It's good. It's a little bit warmer than it's been in a while, so I'm happy for that. The sun is out and there's no snow on the ground, so I'm good.
It's crazy, bro. Like the other day, when he was here, I was with my cousins and we was fishing,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and they was like, it was like 45 degrees maybe that day, and it was chilly. So I'm freezing. Being in LA, like I'm free. I ain't even got no winter jacket, so I'm freezing. And they like, yo, they just said the same thing. Yo, it's a nice day today. The sun is
Right,
out.
like
I'm
it's
like, I'm like, yo,
good.
I'm cold as hell. Like, what are you talking about? But like I will say though, yesterday and the day before when I went to the museum, like I guess my East Coast blood started to kick in. And it
There you
was
go.
actually warmer because I was like, damn, it's
Mhm.
actually pretty nice. And then you go on the parkway and you can see everybody running and they,
Yep.
going up
Yep.
Kelly Drive and doing all that. So it was like, oh, okay, everything is out. So it was love, man. I appreciated that, especially being back. And it's always good to just change up a little bit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just break up that whole scenery, get back to tap on the roots a little bit.
Exactly, bro. So where we want to start today, man, is just like you've been really grinding on a lot of great stuff, bro. And I'm first is just proud of you of what you've been doing is you've been
Appreciate it.
tackling a lot of creative spaces, man. Like first with the art, which is dope. Coming in with the merchandising and coming in with new products. So
Mhm.
I guess my first question is like as an artist, how do you gauge your creativity? Where do you direct your creativity? Is it automatically I'm going to work with a painting first, I'm going to try to work on a new product, or just think of an idea? How do you start that process?
So I think artists are like storytellers, right? Like a
Mm-hmm.
true artist is a storyteller. So I start with the story. Like what
Facts.
am I trying to say or what is trying to be said through me? And then once I tap into that, then I'm saying, all right, now what tools do I need? What's
Mm-hmm.
around me? I start reaching for things. And then as I start to pull things in, the story becomes clearer and then the message starts to flow and then I create a vehicle in which I can transport that message to the audience.
Word. How did you begin on that journey? What was the, I guess, the catalyst that allowed you allowed you to focus on that part of the process instead of just saying, I want sales, I want this, I want that. What was that thing that allowed you to help, go that route?
So originally, I started out as like I've been doing art my whole life, and then I went to school for art and for business, and I never actually met as a child, like growing up in Philly. Like I didn't meet any like professional artists. Like I met muralists and different things like that, but never
Mm-hmm.
anybody who was doing studio work that was like making money. So for
Yeah.
in my mind, I just thought like, all right, the only way you make money as a living artist is you got to go into design, and so that's where I went in that route. And then when I went in that route, I understood like the math behind like how this adds up to
Mm.
this and that adds up to that. And so that was the path I was going. But then what happened was the soul was missing.
Mm.
And then one of my brothers invited me to a show, O'Henny, down in Atlanta. And then when I went down to that show, and he was like, just bring a couple pieces. I was like, I'm not really doing that right now. He's like, just bring a couple pieces. So I brought a couple pieces down there, and then it just opened up my mind to like everything. And I was like, oh, this is the soul that I was missing. It's like if you learn a dance, it's like
Mm.
somebody teaching you just the steps, and you're like, all right, I got the steps, but how come it don't look like when I see this person on the floor, that person, how come it don't look like that? It's because you ain't put the soul in yet. And so when I
Yeah.
realized that the soul was missing, then I was like, all right, you know what? I know how to get to numbers, but let me figure out how to pull out the true story
Mm.
that's me. And then once I pull that out, the numbers are going to come because I'm already in alignment. I just got to
Mm-hmm.
stay the course.
This is, you said something really interesting, like, being in Philly, we're both, from Philly,
Mm-hmm.
and it, oh, I don't know. Hold on, I don't know why my phone is ringing. I thought I had it on that. It's easy to cut it off.
So
But yeah, going back
we
to
get
that.
callers in. They call it
I know, right? Getting the callers in.
in.
But, growing up in Philly, like it's really interesting because I didn't know either that people could make money, via studio art growing up. I only saw the muralists, and I didn't even know how they made money. It was
Right, right.
it was super foreign to me in a lot of
Mhm.
ways, because it didn't calculate, properly. Like, you go to work a regular job, you're doing something and they're paying you for it. I
Right.
looked at, muralism and art as like almost like a donation to humanity. You know what I mean?
That's
Like,
that's
I,
bro.
I didn't understand, how this whole, thing worked. So, like, when you started to understand how this art business worked, how did it change your mind from the soul of the work to understanding the transaction of the work? How did that mix all in?
Mhm. So again, I'm big on, like, again, coming from Philly, you understand, like we that confidence is like what we kind of like is ingrained in us, and we
Mm-hmm.
stand on who we are. Like, it don't matter if the rest of the world is against you. If this is you, stand on it. And so
Facts.
that's what it became. And so I think what happened was, as I went into the industry and went into the space, I started realizing there was a lot of people that were just kind of jumping, and they were jumping from
Mm.
one ship to the next, and they were just kind of riding waves, and no, like, a lot of authenticity was missing. And so for me, I'm like, but if I do that, I'm gonna
Mm-hmm.
go against like the people who I know. Like, if I go back home to my grandma, to my family, they gonna be looking at me like, yo, what? Like, this ain't how
Facts.
you was raised. Who is this person? So like, for me, I just kind of had to stand on who I was, and even if it was like where I was going to be isolated a lot, it just kind of was just like owning it, because I knew the greatness that was me, and so I'm not
Yeah.
waiting for somebody else to tell me who I am and what I am. And so from that, it was just sort of like, all right, now from understanding that, then now I command what it is that I want. So I speak it, and then I be it, and then from there it'll come. And the people who can't get with the
Mm-hmm.
program, they'll fall off, and that's okay,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't want them kind of lingering anyway.
Facts. That's super facts. So,
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier about the design aspect of your practice. How does that shape how you approach things now? Where does design begin and end, and where does that soul, come in?
Right, right. So I look at design and art, or I would say fine art and design. They're both art, but one of them is to solve a problem, and one of them is to
Mm-hmm.
express something. And so the
Mm.
art is the
Good. Good. I
expression,
like that.
and the design is to solve the problem. So now, if I want to fuse that together, it says, all right, what is the problem, and how do I express
Mm.
the solution? And
Mm-hmm.
so from there, either goes with like composition. So taking in like sacred geometry and certain elements that I know convey certain messages when people look at it, and using that as how I base my composition,
Mm.
and then building around that composition to still keep like my authenticity, in terms of keeping it where I'm still giving that spirit, I'm still giving that soul, to the piece, but I'm just staying within that lane with it
Yeah.
while I'm doing it.
How do you know when it's time to put down the design, and just,
Mm,
add into the elements that you see? Because I've seen, artists that really take the design to the whole max, and their
right.
work still comes out as art. And then there's some that use the design as a sketchbook, and,
Mhm.
use get I guess create form, create composition, but then
Right.
play around in that composition. Where does that begin and end for you?
So I take it like there's two things. So one, like, again, going to school for it gives me exposure to other elements of creation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had to take pottery, I had to take different things and
Mm.
stuff like that. So it's like doing sculpture, where you start out with the framework, and then you start to mold it with the clay. And so the design to me is just the framework, and then the
Mm.
creative spirit is that clay. And as I mold it, I don't fight the clay. I move with the clay.
Mm. That's a dope. That's almost Bruce Lee-ish. You know what I mean? With,
That's
you know,
it.
molding with the water. And I
Yeah,
think
yeah, yeah, like
that's
water. Yeah.
that's a great analogy for, artists in this business, and even as a creative and navigating these type of spaces, is just, from the studio to a gallery to a public space, you have to navigate so many different personalities, so many different tools, so many different,
Mhm.
surfaces.
Right.
And even in the business, you navigate the people, you navigate the situations,
Yeah.
you navigate the transactions, you navigate the
Mhm.
understanding. um, what do you think in the beginning of your journey was the most important piece you learned about the creative space versus the business space of art?
So the creative space, the most important thing was to tell your story.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was that I had to go inward and I had to do more research and really pulling everything out that I was brought up with, all the
Mm-hmm.
traumas, all the joys, like all the laughter, like all those elements. I had to pull them all out to the surface
Yeah.
because it can be two people telling the same story, but it's the perspective that makes each story worth and each story valuable, right? And so
Facts.
for me, it's understanding like what my true perspective was on it, and then from
Mm-hmm.
there pulling that to the surface so that then I don't have to worry about, like, people talk about like a block, like an artist block or a writer's block. If
Mm-hmm.
you're telling your story, you can't be blocked because every day you're living something new.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so if you're just telling that, yeah.
I think that's a brilliant way to put it, because we look at life as, you said it, every day is a new canvas. um
Mm-hmm.
and it almost, it's very interesting, because when you look at an artist studio, we'll see canvases from yesterday or yesteryear, you know what I mean, things that
Mm-hmm.
haven't worked on, and now you're putting a new canvas. How important is it for an artist to look back, like you say, you've looked inward and having to go back and understand your direction, your vision for what you wanted? How important is it for looking back in discovery and not looking back and getting stuck?
Mm. So again, like that is an extremely important, like that's a dope question. Mainly because of the fact is that there is a chance that you can get stuck when you
Mm-hmm.
go backwards, and then that's where the depression sets in, right? And so if you doing everything is therapeutic, like for the artist, the art is the therapy, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so when you understand that, it's understanding that to go and look at something versus to try to relive those pains or relive those joys that you may no longer have access to, is all that's going to do is keep you stuck there. Is to take that and look at, all right, what was the lesson that was given in
Mm-hmm.
that space, and how can I take that tool or that skill and bring that to the forefront and actually implement that in the present day. And one of
Yeah.
the ways that I do it is that I have a hard drive full of tons of sketches that date back like decades, just of me like playing with stuff, me testing
Mm-hmm.
out stuff. And then in my mind, as I'm creating something like that, this reminds me of
Mm.
me. And
Mm-hmm.
so then I'll go back and I'll pull elements or pieces from that. And then again, coming from the hip hop era, I'll remix it. So like I'll
Mm.
remix that sample and then I'll put something else onto it. And then now it's like, oh, that piece was never saw the light of day because it was missing this. I didn't have enough skill
Mm.
set to actually attack it. I just needed to
Mm-hmm.
put it down. And so then that's what usually how I kind of tend to attack it.
I like that. Like, so do you, we talk about the levels, because you said something really profound there. Like, you didn't have the skill set to get it yet. Like,
Yeah.
how important has education been for you in your process with not only just understanding, again, we talked about the business, but understanding the creative space, understanding how tools work, understanding how certain things will add a result to the work that you're looking for, and not just, you know uh randomly playing around with things and seeing how it happens, but actually knowing that, hey, if I put this here, it's going to create a patina. If I do this, it's going to
Mhm.
create a reaction that, you know
Mhm.
gives off this. How important has been that education to the studio?
So to me, that's why. So one of the terms I really dislike when I hear it is when they say I'm a self-taught artist,
Mm,
because
mm-hmm.
there's no way you can live in a world and only learn from yourself, right? Like
Facts.
everything in your environment teaches you.
Facts.
Now, you may not have formal education, but if you
Mm-hmm.
are actually going to be a student to your craft, you're going to go out and search for knowledge. And if you search for knowledge, the moment someone else is helping you or something else is helping you, you are no
Mm-hmm.
longer self-taught. You are
Facts.
taught by the environment, and the universe is teaching you. And so to actually be truly connected, you can't be self-taught.
Mm.
And
Mm.
so for me, like in that space, it's like, no,
Mm.
like that the journey and the learning and stuff, like to me, I actually love that more than sometimes the creation itself. Like
Yeah.
I love digging and I love finding stuff because then that's how I get to more truths and more things. And I'm like, I didn't know this. So now I know this and I know that. And then now when I incorporate this into that, it makes something completely different. Like I literally spent a year to 2 years only painting with like glow in the dark paint to
Mm.
understand all the different chemical reactions from the different types and the different
Mm-hmm.
brands and how to make it so that I can make two paintings in one without people even being able to
Mm.
tell it when you see it in the daylight versus when you see it in the black light.
That's so dope, and it's in a sense like you're working in two realities,
Yeah.
and it's very apropos for the art world, as again we always discuss it in the business and the creative side is you're having to create. Well, many artists are having to create for their own creativity, but also for the sales room of the gallery and
Right.
things like that.
Right.
So that glow in the dark process kind of relates to that in a sense, to where
Mhm.
it's like you know it's a dope ass metaphor. Like, how your studio is usually in the dark, right? Like,
Right.
because you're working alone, you're doing, you're creating that piece that's going to, hopefully bring people to understand the practice more, and I
Right.
guess once it hits that that marketplace, that gallery, that
Mhm.
fair, that exhibition, whatever, that's that glow. But sometimes you can actually see that glow already, by the stuff that you're
Right.
doing, by that education, by what you're putting in. I mean, there's artists that, create works, and the moment they're done, they like, yo, this is it.
Right.
This is it. This is
Right.
exactly what I wanted to do, what I wanted to accomplish. And I think that's that glow in the dark. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm. Yep.
because
Yep.
that
Yep.
studio room. So it's like when you said that, I was like, damn, that makes a lot of sense. Like working in two layers, and not only creatively, because like you said, like you have to make that same painting in the
Mhm.
dark, or still appeal in the dark without that luminescence, and then in the light you don't need it to overbear, but you need to show certain things. I think that's a,
Right.
a brilliant analogy for that. um Man, so I guess my question in looking in that is, how do you know, or how have you seen when a collector appreciates the design of your practice or the creativity of your practice, or does that even matter to you?
So to me, it doesn't matter the entry point, right?
Mm.
Once you're in, then you're in. To me, like, and so that's why giving those two sides will allow
Mm-hmm.
a different audience to come into me. I think the beauty is that someone who is admiring the design and someone who's admiring the art, both being in a
Mm-hmm.
gallery, and there's two people standing next to each other who would have normally never talked to each other, and they're talking about that piece, and they're
Facts.
bringing those two sides together and bridging that gap.
Facts. And again, you use that duality, of those two people, and seeing like those two different experiences. How do you make that experience equally important, for
Right. Right.
each visitor, for each viewer? Um,
Mhm.
how does the studio make you feel as an artist? Like, do you feel um determined there? Do you feel more uh like you're looking for collaboration? Do you go into a zone? I mean, I've had artists talk about the studio could be a pretty lonely place, how do you attack your, I guess, feelings of the process in the studio, with sometimes working all day to not knowing what the result's going to be, or not your creative result, but the result when you put it out into the world?
um, I think like yeah, the studio itself can be a very very lonely place, but I have found peace with myself.
Mm-hmm.
So the loneliness is empowering versus like depressing. And
Mm-hmm.
so to me, it's like I can't go and tell you something unless I can hear it from myself, and then I
Mm.
can actually check it. And so being in the studio, it lets me check myself before I'm actually in the space to actually interact with others.
Mm. That's beautiful, and it's one of those things of like, I see it, as editor, curator, and all that, to where it's my thing of like, I have to, when I'm doing a show and I'm creating a book, the
Mhm.
process is grueling already. So,
Yes.
at the end of it, I have to like it. I have to want to see this show. I have to want to buy this book. I have to want
Mhm.
to if there's an artist that I'm representing or trying to, sell the work or whatever, I have to want to buy the work myself.
Right.
It's for me that sometimes can be daunting, because it's like, man, like I don't know that this, I don't know that I'm being honest, with this sometimes, and not saying that I'm not giving it my all, but it's like, yo, am I liking this just so I can be done with the process? You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Or am I just dealing with what it is because I understand what result it can bring me? You know what I mean?
Right.
How do you deal with that type of stuff?
Oh, so the principle in design is less is more, right? So
Mm-hmm.
like you want to get to the solution as fast as possible and not
Yeah.
have too many distractions.
Mm-hmm.
So I start with design. I go into the spiritual realm of like the creation aspect of it, but then I check it with design again at the end
Mm-hmm.
to say, do I really need this? Am I still conveying what I want to convey? And or is it ego that's pushing me to want to continue to do more?
Mm-hmm.
Because if the whole purpose is communication and connecting with an audience or connecting with a person, then or connecting with a story, then once you've made it, then that's it. Like there's no need to
Mm-hmm.
continue to put more into it, because again, it's like when a person is having a conversation, when that person that does that oversharing or over explaining, and then
Mm-hmm.
after a while, if you're sitting there on the other side, you're like, man, I already get it. Like, why you still? And the thing is, like, I always try to check myself to make sure I'm not that person. And the
Yeah.
same thing with my art. Like, am I doing that with my art? Am I over explaining this? Not audioly, but just visually.
Mm-hmm.
And then so
Mm-hmm.
then I can start to pull back and start to really clean and then polish in that regard.
Do you think the oversharing of information in work, because I've come across pieces to where it's like, man, if they would have just possibly stopped a little bit here, then I would have got it. And
Yeah.
do you think that takes away from the viewers or the collector's experience? Because a lot of people like to figure out or like to have an aha moment. At least I do with art,
Right.
to where it's like, oh, I like how he put that together, or I like how she brought attention to that. Do you think that oversharing ruins the experience for the viewer?
Yeah, I think it does. Like it's almost like if you watch a movie in reverse, like I already know what the plot is, like then there's really no point in watching the movie. Like once you already know that, it's like, all right, I know this is gonna happen here, it's gonna happen there. That's why like movies that actually don't do well, the ones where they're so predictable.
Mm-hmm.
Like predictable movies aren't good movies. Movies where they have you on the cliff and they kind of make these turns that you didn't even see coming. Those are the movies that we
Mm,
tend to talk about and that have lasting impacts on our memory. So if I'm gonna do that
yes.
with the art, that's the same thing with the art. It's like I don't want to give you everything. I want you to actually work a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's should be an element or a major proponent of art, right? Of making people work. Like, okay, this is again the perception of how I
Mhm.
see things. Like, let's see if you can get on the same track as I
Mhm.
am. You don't have to agree with the track that I'm on,
Right,
but
right.
let's see if you can understand where I'm going with this, which
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
great, is gracefully important. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
that's where humanity can say, okay, I understand at least what he's trying to say. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Now that also starts for good debate, because if a
Hmm.
person can understand what you're trying to say, and then they can put again that duality, whether they agree or disagree with it,
Disagree. Right.
it gives them a chance to actually have conversation with the work. And that's where I think it is important. And it kind of goes into like sometimes my rants on social media where, you know, people aren't adding that into the work. People aren't
Right.
giving, folks a chance to really get on the same level as them. Because like folks, I've, said it a few times that folks they look to the past a lot, to or past artists, past market and things like that, to understand what's commercial, understand what sells,
Mm-hmm.
but the creatives, those artists in the past, the
Hmm.
Basquiat, Warhols, Rothkos, whatever, they looked to each other. They were visiting each other's studios and going to different parties with each other, gaining ideas, having these conversations, debating about works. I mean, if you look at through our history, there are plenty of quarrels and fights about styles and things like that, because they cared about that part of the practice. How do you
Hmm.
feel that that's missing in today where everything is just so heavily commercial?
Yeah, that part hurts a lot, and sometimes that's what makes the space lonely, right? Because so many
Mm-hmm.
people are so in a scarcity mindset, and in that scarcity mindset, you automatically think that there's limited resources, there's limited ideas, there's limited things, and so what happens is you go back to go with something that you think is proven.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like following the wave. Eventually, that wave is going to come down, and the wave is it's not going to be there. But if you are the
Facts.
current itself, then you don't have to worry because you are the one that's generating the wave.
Mm. Yeah, it reminds me of a buddy of mine told me this little mini story. He's like, and I related it to the art world so vividly, and just creative spaces, especially for people of color, Black people. I hate the BIPOC term, but you know,
Mhm.
just he said if you put two a group of bees or hornets or whatever in two jars, you take one jar, put it next to the other jar, together they'll just live in harmony. They'll just be in their jar doing what they're doing. But if you take one of them and shake it up, then that
Yeah,
causes a whole rift in whatever's going on in that bottle, and then they start to attack each other because everyone's scared, things have changed, you don't know what's going on.
right.
you know he was like, instead of being the hornets in the jar that's uh not shaken, or the jar that is shaken up, he said I'd rather be the hand.
That moves the jar.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I was like,
Exactly.
damn, that's a pretty good analogy for thinking about that. And you know even before we hopped on this and we talked about just being more independent, and taking things into your own hands, that's that trying to be the hand, because
Right.
waiting in this environment for an artist and curator or a business person, artist professional, is like being shaken up in that jar.
Right.
It drives you nuts. So how have you tried to navigate not being in that jar?
Yeah. So I like sometimes I think like the moment and again, it's just the same thing coming from Phil. Like the moment you start to see where you starting to look like everybody and move like everybody, and you start to form in a box, I do the opposite of that
Yeah.
on purpose,
Yeah.
just because I want to push myself. So the thing, like again, like, and this is one of the things I did early on. Like, and I was using the paintbrush, and I was happy with the paintbrush. Everything is smooth, and I was like, yeah. But if I want to push the design aspect of it, I need to challenge myself. So then I started painting for like a couple years with only a palette knife
Mm.
because it forced me to be able to really make it so that it made sense. And then when you're painting small with a palette knife and you still want it to translate well, it's a lot harder. And then so my
Mm-hmm.
brush techniques are trying to come in and be like, I can control it and smooth it out, but then it's not smoothing out. And so then what happened is I had to fall in love with the imperfections
Mm.
and find a way to pull those to the surface and understand why they are important.
Wow. Wow. And I think that's a very good concept, because most people in the beginning stages of what they're doing, or even through the process of becoming a more seasoned artist, imperfections sometimes seem like a hill in the road. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I've really only heard older artists, or senior artists, really be that comfortable with imperfections, and that, again, that's just over time, of them
Right.
making different things and them learning the process of saying, what, that's actually okay. That actually adds life to this process. That actually adds feeling, emotion, things that sometimes younger artists aren't necessarily looking toward, because it's a lot of aesthetics. We have a different culture. We're in a different culture space, so
Mm-hmm.
our conversations are a little bit different. Being perfect at a young age is very important. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like trying to look right, trying to dress right, wanting to paint lines so perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've seen it. We've seen
Right.
the clips of Cause, and he has his line
Yep.
and he's painting it
So,
so
yep.
proficient. You know what I mean? But he's been doing this for like 30 years. Like, you know what I mean?
Right,
So it's like
right, right.
people don't understand that part of it. And I think that, being comfortable with that imperfection, and like you said, making that imperfection a part of your perfectness,
Mm-hmm.
is a tool that, once learned, it takes you to a whole new level. I mean, being imperfect is part of humanity.
Right, right. That's
Yeah.
the beauty of the story. Like that's the part that people actually want to see. That's the part that people fall in love with. That's the part that people actually connect with.
Yeah.
And then
Like,
people get upset with like the machines or the AI and different things like that because they're drifting one direction and they can create things exactly, but
mm-hmm.
they even in that they can't put the soul in it because the soul is the imperfection part that you pull through, and that's the
Yes.
part that is missing in that regard. So that's why an artist who's a true artist can take those and use them only as tools and elevate it to a whole nother level. Whereas the
Yes.
everyday person still isn't going to be able to compete with
Yeah.
the artist using the tool because
Using tool.
they don't understand the source of where that power comes from.
Exactly. And bro, that's it's perfectly said again because you seen when I dropped the post of, just talking about AI and, all of
Right.
that, and it's like I when it first came out and the way people were using it and, putting it straight out and just saying, "Oh, this is my prompt art." Da, 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 I was like, "Yeah, no, I'm not with that, yo. Hell no."
Right.
You know, but once I saw a few artists that were using it as the tool inside of their practice, and
Mm-hmm.
their practice didn't change. It's just that they incorporated a new tool to do things faster. And that's when I was
Right.
like, oh, yeah, that's how this should be used. And then I became a
Mm-hmm.
fan of it in creation. As far as workflow and all that, bro, I use Chat
Yeah.
GPT and a whole bunch of other
Exactly.
language learning models for a lot of stuff, bro. It's taking hours off my process. It's giving me mental health back. You know what I mean?
Right.
In a lot of situations, to where I can focus, and maybe something that might have taken me an hour now takes me 10 minutes. I've trained it on myself. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like that studio, I've added that tool to my creative studio to where it's like, all right, I mean, bro, I've trained it on my grad school notebooks. I've trained it on things that I've written. I've trained it on videos that I've done, to where it's like, all
Mm-hmm.
right, I need you to help think like how I think, and
Right.
train it because I need freaking help. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Right.
Like,
Right.
so how have you incorporated the AI into your practice, whether business or creative?
So again, chat is always good because again, I'm big on writing,
Yeah.
and when you have to write, and I'm creating a lot of pieces, and I'm writing for each piece, like you
Yeah.
have to scan it for grammar, you have to do all these other stuff. You got to make sure that like it actually just reads well, and so
Facts.
sometimes getting a prompt to just literally start the process allows to speed up the process, and then when you can speed that up, I can spend more time putting those Easter eggs inside of the piece
Hmm.
as opposed to being stuck on just doing the piece.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, most of the time creativity is a lot of it's just getting started, getting a jump off point. I mean, there's so many times to where, like, I mean, I use my iPhone, for
Mhm.
everything, like
Right, right.
notes, like even my iPad, like I keep my notes list and to-do list right on there because it's just
Mhm.
easily accessible. So I
Right.
can, I'll take a bunch of notes. So it's like if I walk into a place, let's say I'm writing a review for an exhibition, I'll go in there and I'll take notes, and I'll
Mhm.
go and I'll say, I'm walking in, I'm seeing this, I'm enjoying this. So I had a conversation with a visitor about this or this and that. And I'll, draft up something in my mind and I'll say, hey, chat, look at this. I'm trying to, formulate these into structure. This is
Mhm.
how I've written other articles before. This is my voice. Allow me to stay on the same structure. It's not like it's writing it for me, it's taking my notes,
It's taking you and it's pulling it
it's
together.
pulling it together. So it was like,
Right.
just like you said, it takes something that would have taken me an hour, 2 hours to just formulate these ideas, organize them. It puts them in a way to where it's like, okay, now I'm seeing these ideas chronologically, I'm seeing them in order. And now I can go in and say, nah, that's not how I saw it. That's not
Right.
this. And then I can structure it out to where it's like, boom, this is
Mhm.
this has helped me. It's given me almost like a proofreader, like you said, in a sense.
Right.
um One thing that's going to be really dope is when you start to have a chat GPT type studio bot that'll help you with painting. And then that will put artists like Jeff Koons and Kehinde Wiley up to the
Yep.
new level.
Exactly. But you see, here's the other thing too. Like, if you actually study history and you study the practices of like different artists, as you start to move it deeper into it, you
Yeah.
have a whole studio, and the whole studio doesn't mean it's just you. And that's the
Yeah.
part that people
Yeah.
understand. like it's a machine that is built there, right? So now
Facts.
for the everyday person, you're trying to compete against a machine that you don't even realize it's a machine, because all you see is that you just see the end product and you're thinking you're trying to compete with that. But then
Oh
once you
yeah.
go back and you realize, all right, well, now I can use these tools to help give me a machine so that I can at least start to level the playing field. And then when
Mm-hmm.
I'm making all of this, I can hire the people to be the actual physical machine versus having to use these tools.
Yeah, I think that's one of the hidden gems of
Mhm.
AI. And I think you helped expose it right there.
Yeah, I mean,
Because no, and that's a good thing because like you said it was perfect. Like they're giving you the assistance that you need if you know how to train them for what you need. You know, you're
right,
if even if you were to hire a studio intern or hire a gallery intern, they're no good to you if they don't know what they're doing. The same
right,
thing like with the AI. Like, yo, AI doesn't do nothing you don't tell it to do or don't train it to do. So if you bring
mm-hmm.
that in studio and say, look, from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m., I'm going through my emails, checking out these different things. I'm trying
Mm-hmm.
to check out boom, boom, boom while I'm filling out grants. I
Mm-hmm.
need a template for grant writing. Let's
Right,
work on that. So now I got that. Now I'm boom, boom, boom. It's bringing me a checklist. I've created different code based things. I've created that art
mm-hmm.
history manager. I've helped things with the research, things that have
Mm-hmm.
taken me hours. I mean, bro, creating these falling through the cracks of videos and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It takes me an hour for production, maybe hour or two sometimes for research. And
Yeah,
that that's a
yeah.
lot. You know what I mean?
That's
So
a lot.
being able to help, chop these down to at least help with my overlays and things like that, that's been hugely important for the process. So
Mm-hmm.
when I go on these, social media platforms and I see these crazy fights about I want to jump in, but I know sometimes just bro, stay the hell out of it.
Stay out.
I want to go in and just be like, yo, like if you want to use AI, use it. No
Right.
one really cares. But at the end of the day, if someone is, a person that really loves the process of art and building an art, they're going to make the final decision on whether the piece is valid to them. There's going to be people that love straight prompt based art. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay with that. There's people that felt the same way about video art, felt the same way about abstract work, felt the same way about so many different periods before they became society. I mean, computer based work. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like, there's, the artist Corey Archangel. He does stuff with Photoshop, and his actual description is the actual settings on Photoshop inside of his work. I thought it's brilliant because
Yeah.
again, it was different. Another artist, Wade Guyton, he uses printers. He prints out the work. I'm not a fan of his work. I've been very vocal about that. But I don't knock his artistry. I think what
Right.
he's doing is profound. I'm just not a
Mm-hmm.
fan of the result. And
Yeah.
that's okay because we're not
It's
going to
okay.
like
Yeah.
every piece of art. But I do dig that he tried something different. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that's what kept this whole thing going. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right. Right.
So like I guess my next question is, as an artist, how do you deal with people making crazy waves about the tools that you use? I mean, like if you're doing a
Yeah.
mural and you use a projector to get things right,
Right.
or if you're doing it, how do you deal with stuff like that?
So, because I got friends who are like that, like they're purists and like they like things a certain way, and like coming in and being in the art space, like you're gonna come across all those different people. And I always just say, whatever works for you, and it is who you are. And to me,
Yep.
I'm always gonna be an advocate for people being their authentic self, however that shows up.
Facts.
And to me, I'm just like, yo, what is your end goal? Like, is your end goal the process to say that you've done it from scratch? Or is your
Mm-hmm.
end goal the communication in which you're trying to translate to someone else and to be able to do that multiple times? And so,
Facts.
depending on what your end goal is, that's what's most important. So, and when I'm telling you my end goal is to convey a message of love and to connect to people, then whatever tools are going to help me get that message across, because it's a
Mm-hmm.
healing message, I'm going to use those tools because I need it to penetrate to the souls of the people, as opposed to saying me being taking the credit of saying I've done everything. I created the paint myself. I created the brushes myself. I stretched the canvas. I cut
Mm-hmm.
the canvas. Like I did everything like completely from scratch. Like to me, that doesn't do anything for the process of what I'm trying to convey. But now a person who does do that, they're artists. They're creating for artists for the most part and extremists. Like those people love that to see, like they love to see those elements and stuff, and they love to break down. Like they love to come into the studio, see how you make the paint, see how you're doing these different things like that. Like those
Yeah,
people genuinely love that, but those people will not be at the same tables with the other people.
that's a fact. How do you how is the how has the public space been for you as far as creating in public art and things like that, working with the city and things like that of creating those designs versus the gallery space? Because I imagine, you know, running your own business as an independent artist, you've come across so many different things in both avenues of that, bro. So let's talk about that part.
So again, I'm an athlete, so I love competition, and I'm okay with that, right? But
Yeah.
I like it when it's on the same playing field, right? And so I realize sometimes in that public space, the playing field isn't leveled, and then
Yeah.
sometimes there's people that need to be educated on how you need to approach artists, and
Facts.
sometimes the people tend to like to manipulate and use artists to get certain aspects, and so you have a lot of these competitions that don't actually get any type of funding towards, and you want artists to do free work, and then you give one artist a bone, but the bone isn't even enough for them to be fed off of. And
Yeah.
so understanding that is realizing like the power of no, and like the power of just stepping out and just taking yourself out of the equation. And so some of these spaces is like you can advocate for it and you can kind of speak up for the people and for what needs to
Mm-hmm.
be done, but the way you truly speak is by not actually participating.
Facts. Facts.
Yeah.
I mean, I've I've been in that in both spaces. You know, like public art space is brutal. You know, for those out there that think the gallery space is tough, like try to get a public art commission.
Mm-hmm.
Like sometimes the process makes no sense.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it seems like it's already chosen before you even put an application in.
Yeah.
And sometimes like you get through the process only to find out that there was information that you needed that you didn't know that you needed.
Yeah.
So it's I think that is much tougher than the gallery. And again, I'm on the curator side, art professional side of trying to get these commissions, trying to curate and work these shows, and being a gallerist. Like that side of it is even tough. Yeah, so I
Right.
can even imagine for an artist like writing a grant for a gallery program or writing a grant for an exhibition. Shit, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's tough. It and then your competition is 7,000 other exhibitions and all this type of stuff to where you don't know what the hell is going on. Like you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like how do you deal with like I guess shit what do I want to say, how do you deal with knowing that you're going to go through this grueling ass process for a result that you may not even understand or even may not know what result you're supposed to get?
So this is where the beauty of me loving research comes into play for me, right? And so
Yeah.
because I love that in the painting process, I'm still painting, but I'm painting my career. And so since I'm painting
Mm.
my career, I got to take the same practices that I take in my practice, the same thing in terms of how I move, right? And so for
Facts.
me, it's understanding like I'm not a gambling person. I'm only going to
Yeah,
make a bet when I know the odds are in my favor.
that's a
So then it's
fact.
not, it's a calculated risk.
Facts.
And so for
Facts.
that, to me, I'm like, all right, well, the first thing you do is you become an asset to people.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not always about what you can get, it's what you can give. So the way I decided to start moving in terms of with connecting with people is what resource do I have that I can pass to you? Is it my time? Is it my knowledge? Is it just people I know that I can pass on to you? And I don't pass it
Mm-hmm.
on thinking I'm about to get this in return. I pass it on to with the mindset of a gardener. Whatever
Yeah.
I sow, so shall I reap, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
like if I'm sowing love, if I'm sowing support, if I'm sowing community, then eventually community is going to come back to me. It doesn't have to come from the person who I sow it with. It can come from
Mm-hmm.
somebody else. It can even come from a whole nother generation because I'm
Facts.
vibrating that way. And so for me, it's just like, yo, a lot of people going in and like, how do I get this? How do I get this person to do this for me? I'm like, nah, what does this person need? How do I help this
Mm-hmm.
person? And then and from that, sometimes just sitting down with that person, you get a whole plethora of information that you didn't even know was information you need.
Facts.
Like
Big facts.
I realized growing up, like sometimes when you give the homeless person the food and you sit down and have a conversation with you, they telling you, they like, all right, young boy, like this is what you got to look out for. This is
Mm-hmm.
why you don't want to be out here doing this and doing that. This is why, and then when stuff starts happening, they start looking out for you
Yeah.
because
That I
we
mean,
said,
that's a
yeah,
Philly vibe though.
yeah,
That's
that
that
is
right
really,
there. That's the Philly vibe because we've we've seen, the old heads growing up that, had it, that were rolling, and now they're later in age and they don't have it, and they might be a little messed up here and there, or they might have gone through something or might have hit jail.
right,
Wallow is an
yeah,
example of that, and thankfully, he's not out in the streets doing his thing, but there are people just like Wallow that didn't have the opportunities that he did, that kicked that same game, and
right,
if you
right,
just listen, you know what I
yep,
mean? They're telling you, like you said, like they're gonna put you on a game. You give them 5 minutes of your time, you might get a lifetime of game,
yep,
and there's people like that in every hood. And man, that's that's dope. I think artists should do that. They should
yeah,
find somebody in the hood to really talk to them about
right,
what's really out here, because that's perspective like a mofo. Like that
yeah,
person has been through life. And I always kind of like felt weird about people who say, well, I don't want to listen to a person who's not already where I'm going. And it's like, why not? That
you know,
person
it's
can tell
funny.
you. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
Yeah,
bro.
and no, no, you good. The part that's funny about that statement is that you don't want to listen to a person who's not where you're going, but you don't realize where they came from. So you don't even
Facts.
realize what, like you just looking at it from the surface and stuff, and you don't realize like they may have been a person who was raised in the space in which you're trying to enter into. They left
Mm-hmm.
it because of certain things, so you're only seeing part of the story, but
Big
you can't get the
facts.
rest if you don't sit down. Sometimes it's like just being quiet gets you the rest of the story.
Yo, I would tell you this, bro. Like it was this brother who was in the hood. I still don't remember his name. Older here. I think he might know my mom or my uncles or something like that.
Mhm.
But I've seen him for years. Like talking about growing up all the time. Never never thought much of it. You know what I'm saying?
Right,
Never thought much of it. But one day I was at an opening downtown and I seen him there. It was like an environment like, yo, like what
like
you
why?
doing
Yeah,
here?
right.
You know what I mean? Not knowing this brother from the hood was a big art collector.
Mm, mm,
I had no clue. But again,
mhm.
it goes back to what you said earlier, getting the skill set, understanding what's going on. I wouldn't have even known if I wasn't getting to this journey. I wouldn't have even been able to notice him in that environment.
Right,
So it's like if he would have came up to me and be like, "Yo, young boy, like you should understand this art. It does this, that, and the third." I'd probably be like, "Man, fuck out of here!" Like, you know what I mean?
right,
Like,
right,
what are you
right,
talking about? I'm trying to play basketball. Like, I'm trying to get,
right,
I'm trying
right.
to get girls or whatever, whatever. Not
Yeah.
knowing the path that I was on. You know what I
Mm,
mean? And again, like I said, like not listening, he could have, and I was able to talk to him at the show, like, yo, I didn't even know that you was even into this. And he was like, I didn't even know you was into it. Like, you know what I mean? So it was very, very dope. And if I wasn't open to understanding that or even willing to embrace that or just be ignorant to it, I wouldn't have even got that
right,
experience,
right.
like, and there's plenty of people out in, the the regular hood and the art world hood, because the art world
Mhm.
definitely has a hood.
Definitely does.
You know what I mean? So, there's people in that hood to where it's like they might not be Kahinde Wiley or Basquiat, but they've been through this game,
Right.
and they can tell you. I have plenty of artist friends in LA who I'm thankful for that keep
Mm,
me up on game daily. You know
mm,
what I mean? Because they've
yeah,
been through stuff. They're like, yo, like this person is this, or, this person can really help you with this, or don't even
mm,
deal with this because it's a waste of time, or this person has history with this. And sometimes we don't realize how crucial having that information is to a decision that you're about to make, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's where, like, I guess, how it leads into my next question with networking. How important is networking versus getting information that you need? Because networking can be just gathering a whole bunch of numbers and a whole bunch of people that can't help you. You don't know if they can help you until they actually help you. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? But that person that's, giving you the game is actually helping you immediately. You know what I mean?
Right.
So how do you deal with networking in that space?
So to me, I learn the most through interactions
Mm-hmm.
and small conversations. And for me, I would say I look for people who I can have a lot of small conversations with. If I feel as though, like, to me, that's all I need to make it worth it for me. Like, even
Yeah.
if it's no money that exchanges hands, there's no other connection that exchanges hands. If I can have a small conversation with you and I can
Mm-hmm.
enjoy it, then that adds to my arsenal in terms of what I can create.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, I'm looking for people who I can have those small conversations with. Now, if it's a person where you can tell they're self driven and they're doing that, they're going to have
Mm-hmm.
a long conversation because they want to milk everything out of you. And
Mm-hmm.
so again, that goes against what my thing is. Like, can I have a small conversation? If it's only a
Mm-hmm.
long conversation, then it's probably not a connection I'm going to be able to give as much energy that it's going to require. So I'm going to just let that
Mm.
one pass.
Yeah. Yeah. And those long conversations, I mean, that's part of the IP theft business.
Yeah.
you, know, you know what I mean? Like the people come through and they would have had, like you said, these long conversations, and you don't realize, like, you should have been charging them, for this joint. Like, look, bro, like, I'm giving you all this type of situation, and I think that's an approach to how I handle things, to where it's like, all the free information, especially if you're not a homie or fan, all the free
Right.
information you get on my stories, I
Right.
put I put enough out there,
Yeah.
for folks to know that I know what I'm talking about. That give you at least a little guidance, and I'm writing the books and this and that and the third. But again, I'm with you on that. Like, short conversations are like golden. Like, again, I'm still more of an introvert, even though I have an extroverted personality when I need to. Like, I don't like people standing next to me talking my head off. You know what I mean? And like asking me a whole bunch of shit, like probing and all that. Like, I don't
Right.
dig it. That's why I was, saying about the networking thing, to where it's like, I'm not the person that's going to be walking up to people. Hi, what you do? What do you do? Da, 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 da. The people that I meet, it's usually something like you said, something really quick. Like, either you know, um, we're in front of a painting, or someone introduces us, or we happen to bump at some type of event, and like, hey, oh, I see you at the last place, or
Yeah.
don't you know this person, and then you just happen to start talking, and most of the time it has nothing to do with art. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like, it's a mutual whatever, just, hey, we're here, or this person too, and you start talking. It's like, hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm this, oh, I'm that, and then it's like, hey, let's do a studio visit, let's do this or whatever, and then it's all genuine because you're
Right.
just like, yo, like, I didn't come at you directly for this, and that small conversation led to another small one, that led to a small one, that leads to a project, to
Right.
where that turns into something that's beneficial for both of us. And
Right.
I think that's where networking just goes off. I mean, you've been in situations, bro,
Mm-hmm.
where people, they're not looking to have a meaningful conversation with you. They're just looking to conversate with you. So they
Yeah.
say they talk to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Exactly. Exactly. And you also
like
think of like how a web works, right? Like, there's not that one long strand, because that one long strand is actually the weakest strand. It's
yeah,
those little small ones that allow it to be really strong and stable. And so those
facts.
little conversations is those little small ones that make it the stability, and allowing it where if I don't talk to you for like years and we
Mm-hmm.
pick back up, we can have another small conversation. We don't got to
Mm-hmm.
catch all the way up, and we picking up right where we left off.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's a great analogy as well, because like, that being that long strand is a weak strand, the
Mhm.
person that does that, you kind of know that, hey, this might be even the last time I talk to this person. You know what I
Right, right.
mean? So it's like, there, you want to get into those short, strong conversations, because that leaves people wanting a little bit more. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it wants them to know, like, hey man, I wonder what he thinks about this, or you know, I wonder what his approach to this idea would be. um
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to be a book they can read in a night.
Right.
You know
Right.
what I mean? Like, you know, you try to have some chapters about yourself, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
that's where I think that mystery, and you know, when we talked about earlier, we're giving the viewer something to figure out, you know, because humanity is, you know, that art piece as well. It's like, you know,
Right.
how do I how am I able to figure out, you know, again, just like what you said, what does this person need? Why are they here? What are they trying to
Right.
get out of this? You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
what are they trying to solve by investing in art, or you know, linking with artists, or you know, sometimes, you know, even most of the time for people, it's not the purchase, it's not the purchase. You know
It's
what I
not.
mean?
Not at all.
It's not them owning the work that does it.
Yeah.
It's, for a lot of people, it's actually talking to an artist about their problems. Like,
Right.
being able to come in and seeing an art piece that relates to exactly what they're going through.
Right.
A
Real.
lot of it's therapeutic. You
Mm-hmm.
know, people, there are people that go to art museums and stuff like that to get over shit in their lives, you
That's
know,
real.
and go to art galleries. Like, I mean, bro, I've been to shows and, you know, had those side small conversations with friends and things like that. And they're like, hey, man, like, I'm glad I was able to do this show. Like, I was fucking 3 months behind on my rent. You know, I was, you know, starting to give up on this art shit. You know, I didn't know what to do. And now I'm finally getting a show that restores my confidence. You know, so it's a,
Mm-hmm.
you just don't know what, you know, people are going through. Like, and my question in this one is like, as an artist, how do you, when you go to exhibitions and museums, how do you put yourself in the shoes of that artist, or can you, or how do you try to relate to that artist's journey?
Mm.
Because that could potentially be you one day, you know what I
Yeah,
mean, like in this
it
museum.
could definitely too. Yeah, in the museum and stuff like that. Not can be, it will be. It's
Will be,
just
yes.
it's only a matter of time. Like,
Yeah,
yeah,
for sure, for sure.
yeah. And I mean, I think to relate to that, it's so many different ways. Like for me, first I come in as a spectator, and I come in
Mm-hmm.
as a like a person who just appreciates the art, and I'm like, all right, so what is it about their piece that's pulling me in? And then what are the
Mm-hmm.
little things that most people won't actually notice? What are those imperfections that are
Mm-hmm.
so beautifully placed in this piece that it makes it perfect?
Yeah,
And so then
yeah.
I look at that, and then as you start to read the story and as you connect with the artist, like people don't understand, it's like that relationship between like the collector or the appreciator of the art and the artist
Mm-hmm.
is so beautiful when it's done right, because it's healing to on both sides of the coin, because the
Facts.
artist gets the validation of the fact that they're not alone in telling their story, and the
Mm-hmm.
viewer gets the validation that I may not have words for what I'm going through, but I can see it or I can hear it,
Mm-hmm.
and so I know I'm not alone. And so then both parties realize that they are the community in themselves and that they can lean on each other. And then from there, that's when that beautiful relationship grows into people collecting it and having it
Mm-hmm.
in their space, because now they're surrounded by the things they can't put words to.
That's beautifully said, bro. Do you think people are, I mean, we know this is happening. I mean, they're collecting it for financial gain, but do you think people are actually connecting with work anymore? Or do you think it's all an act to create or to secure a better deal on a piece, or to secure access, or to get in good with the gallerist? Do you think that people are actually buying, participating in, and you know, experiencing art that are truly changing their lives or changing the way that they're seeing the world these days?
So I think with just like again, these are all mirrors of what reality is in itself, right? And
Yeah.
so in order for you to appreciate one side, you need the other side. So I think that there are just as many people who are out here trying to find ways to manipulate it. There are
Mm-hmm.
just that many people out here who really truly appreciate it and need it. The thing is
Facts.
that we can get fixed on one side or the other, or we can just get fixed on the actual journey and then allow those sides, because at some point you need the other side to balance out the other one, because too much of any
Yeah.
side is not going to actually be beneficial to either side.
Facts. And again, same thing we talk about. So this conversation has been about duality a lot.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
know what I
Yeah,
mean?
listen.
So it's that what you just said also relates to what we were talking about earlier with the creativity in the business. You know,
Hmm.
too much business you might make your art suffer because, I know
Right.
some artists that, I still like their work. They're doing, still dope work, but it
Right.
isn't like when they were just trying to get in that market. Now that
Right.
they're literally they secured their shows, they're doing their things. The work for me, and again for me, I'm a person. I see a lot of work. I pride myself on looking at things constantly and in detail and just enjoying and appreciating and also being a critic because I like to comment on what I see.
Right.
There's been things that have been like certain series I'm like, man, you totally missed on this one. You know what I
Mm.
mean?
Yeah.
Or this whatever partnership or whatever that this wasn't a
Mhm.
good one for me. For a lot of
Right.
people, it might have worked for, but I'm like, damn, I really liked the direction you were going there, and it took
Hmm.
you here. So, do you feel that way about um, your work sometimes, or do you feel about that way about work you go in and see, and how does that affect your practice?
So I think those are beautiful spaces. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't think it's a bad thing to go down the path and realize that the only thing you found on the path was one coin, because that one coin might be the amount you need to level up to the next level. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I got to walk back down that dark hallway and realize, like, damn, this is all I got from this.
Mm.
But if I take it and I apply it to what I already have, now I'm leveling up. And
Facts.
so sometimes those are just the exploratory spaces and times. And so sometimes you need to go to that, what people call that ugly phase. You need to go through
Mm-hmm.
those ugly phases because in order for it to mold into that beautiful phase and stuff.
Yeah, that's so true. That's so true. I mean, it reminds me of like that other side of the coin where you have so much creativity that you can't get the business right. So it's like with that coin, it's like damn, people are like, I'm only finding one coin in this dark room, and it's like
Mm-hmm.
the you might not get to the light of that room to
Mm-hmm.
the toward the end of or the twilight of the career that you're on. Like I seen something that was profound yesterday, and they were on the wealth channel, the social media thing, and they were talking about like all these folks that became billionaires after 40.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And as young people, we're like, yo, like I'm trying to get at this bag, I'm trying to do this, like
Right, right,
whatever.
right.
And it's like not knowing that, that one coin, once you finally turn on the light, all the money was in front of you. So,
Mm-hmm.
you're going back and forth down the dark hallway. There's that
Yep,
only one coin is there,
yep.
and it's like, but maybe you have to keep going back and forth down that hallway to realize that you got to keep moving forward. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where we were talking about earlier about the path of how much can you get stuck. Like, is it going back and forth actually helping you understand how to move forward, or is it keeping you running this treadmill and keeping you stuck in that darkness of a hallway, because
Yeah,
I mean it's like the 3 foot from gold thing. Like so many
yeah.
people give up 3 feet from
Right,
their goal.
right.
you know
No, that's no, that's definitely true. And I think, yeah, it's just kind of knowing that and not being afraid to sacrifice. Like, I feel like every level needs a sacrifice.
yeah.
And I know it may sound kind of dark, but it is what it is. Like, in terms of, like, in order for you to gain muscle, you have to tear the muscle. And
Yeah.
so that's this, you're sacrificing the muscle at its current stage in order for it to grow bigger. And that's the same time that has to happen sometimes. Sometimes you have to sacrifice what you currently feel secure in order for you to
Mm-hmm.
gain something that's going to give you more security. And if that
Facts.
one coin, if I have to take that one coin and put it into this slot so that the lights turn on,
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes I have to be like, I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just going to
Yeah.
drop it in the slot. And then when you drop it in the slot, the lights come on and you surround it in gold. You're like, oh, what the hell? Like, yeah, like,
Facts. Facts. I mean, like to use the Ducktales analogy, you
yeah.
ain't know Scrooge McDuck had all that bread in there until he turned the light on and
Turn
jumped
the
in
light on.
it.
That's real. That's real.
You wouldn't know what was in that room until you went in there and
Right.
turned the light on. So,
Right.
like, I mean, that's a brilliant analogy, and like I hope that any artists that are listening to this is really taking heed to that, because the journey is rather dark,
Hmm.
and it's rather confusing, and it's a lot of stuff that's like, yo, like I could be doing so much other stuff that's going to make me money. But
Right.
it's like, if you're only in this money, then yeah, maybe you should switch it up. Maybe you should
Right.
do that. But if you're trying to get money and, like you said, that soul in your work, and experience life, and experience the detail of what you are currently, not just experiencing, but living through, and expressing and connecting with people, then there's so much more, in with putting that coin in that slot. You know what I
Right.
mean? That coin is, the catalyst for everything else great. There's certain people that have picked that coin up, put it in their pocket to keep, try to just figure out how to get out that dark room,
Right.
because their goal is money, or
Mm.
their way is keep kicking around on the floor and hearing if they hear something jingle, you know what I mean? And thinking that there's
Right.
other coins around. Um, yeah, man, that's just a brilliant, brilliant damn analogy. So I guess, for our final question today, how are you helping yourself to find your coin, to be able to turn on that light for you, or do you have a coin that has that recess lighting where you can,
Mhm.
it's coming on, short, slowly,
Right.
but it's coming up, you know what I mean?
So it's something I was talking to one of my younger cousins in the city, and one thing I was telling him, I said the key to like growing into a true man is patience and forgiveness.
Mm.
So for me, what I feel like is I am being patient for what is mine to
Mm-hmm.
come when it's time, and I'm
Facts.
forgiving myself for all the headaches that I give myself.
Facts. Facts. Big facts. Oh my god. Oh man, that hit a nerve right there, bro. I'm sure I'm the source of all my headaches too. Oh my
Right,
gosh. Damn. You didn't have to call me out like that, bro. No, but
right.
that's deep, bro. That's real. Like, and just that's my goal for this year, is just try to not, you know, take on the headaches. And I think that's kind of like what this podcast is about too. Like, we want to have brothers, talking about these headaches, and being able
Right.
to work through them, and being able to just have a conversation about them. Like, there's a lot of stuff that, we don't talk about, that we go through and deal in these spaces. And there's so much that we can learn from each other,
Yeah.
like you said, just by, passing on that information, and just the giving aspect of it. And
Hmm.
I'm hope that, the you giving me of your time, and we giving of this podcast episode to others, will encourage people to, to give something to somebody else. Because once you
Right.
create that train of giving, that web, you know what I mean, like,
Exactly.
you in a real good environment, and
Hmm.
the brothers that I've been able to, have on this podcast, and will have on here, is it's just been a real good community of just great brothers,
Yeah.
that, have been like, yo, when I asked them, like, yo, like, sure, let's rock out. And I think that's the ultimate level of, love and respect for someone to give you their time, and so
Right.
I'm truly appreciative, bro. Like, I already tell you, but like, even just just doing this and being able to share the stuff that you do, and it's beneficial to not just me, but a bunch of other people out there that are alongside the same journey. And so tell folks where they can find your work, bro, and what you got coming, man. I want them to be able to support you and all this good stuff you got going.
All right. So you can find me at Blue Robin CMB. You can find me.com or on any of the social media platforms. I currently have a fragrance that's out now called
Yes, sir.
Azura. That joint, man, it's a unisex scent and it smells amazing. I took the same
Yeah.
crafted the same way I crafted painting. I'm currently working on finishing up the logistics to get my first Oracle deck out, which is
Nice.
literally it's going to be 24 cards with all they're all from individual paintings, and I have it all in card form. So now you can kind of hold paintings in your hand, and you can do with
Yeah.
it whatever you need to do. And then also have those will also be available on the canvas. But yeah, it's just kind of being like for me right now, it's just kind of trying to push those two trains
Yeah.
really forward, and and continue to push that message of love, and like making sure that people kind of vibrate with that, and continue to use that and share that.
Big facts, Bex. Big facts, man. Like you said, like that cologne is fire, bro. Like straight up.
Appreciate it,
Like
bro.
I be
Appreciate
definitely
it.
rocking that because it's like it's one of those things for like beach scents. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's very light. You know, you
yeah.
can go and enjoy. Like you don't have to be overbearing, but you also are
Mm-hmm.
smelling fresh and good, and it's one of
Yeah.
those fresh after shower joints. You know what
Yep,
I
yep,
mean? And
yep.
it's love. Like I love that joint, bro. Like, and I'm
Appreciate
always
it.
wishing you major success on all of that, bro, because you deserve it and you work very
Appreciate it.
very hard for it. Um,
Appreciate it, bro.
so
And then
yeah, that
thank
was
you
yeah,
for
for
thank you
sure.
for like creating a platform where we also get to have these types of conversations. Like I've been watching the ones that
Always
you had prior to, and I already know like whenever you kind of set your mind on a project, like you go in, and like sometimes like not having those voices in that spaces
yeah,
is what makes those spaces dark. But then when there are lights like you that come out to be like, nah, like I'm about to shine this light and I'm about to blast it on what we out here doing. Like that makes it
facts.
so that we can just kind of in our community look and be like, all right, while he's handling that, we're going to double down on what we're doing because we know somebody going
Facts.
to at least be able to get that message to the people while we out here creating it.
Big facts, man. That's all it's about. You know, it's just contributing and just one foot in front of the other and just, you know, being an asset. You know, just like we
Right,
talked about, just being an asset, you know.
right.
That's shit, that's all.
Yeah,
So y'all, thank y'all for joining us on this episode of Cultural Canvases, Black Men Reshaping Fine Art and Creative Spaces. I'm your host and curator, Badir McCleary. This is my brother, Blue Robin. Check y'all next episode and subscribe, share, and yeah, catch y'all later. Peace.
peace.